Welcome back to another episode of Mailbag Monday, where Chris and I are answering all of your marketing, data, AI, very lightly legal questions. This week, Chris, Tobi asked, you've probably been asked this a million times, but what is your take on generative AI's impact on editors and writers? Will they become extinct? Will they just become masters of data assemblage?
Okay, so a couple of different things here. We're going to talk first about what to use AI for, and then we're going to talk about threads and spinning, the actual textiles. First, when should you be using AI? If you have content that is, I would call creative or expert level content, that's one category of content. The other category of content is generic content, commodity content, right? If you stay in a hotel room and there's a painting on the wall of like a basket of flowers or a sailboat or something, that's commodity content. No one really actually cares. Like the way I like to think of it is this: when was the last time you stayed in a hotel room where the art was so compelling you're like, what if I can steal this, right? If you wouldn't get caught, would you steal it? The answer is no. Most of the time, like no, I would not take this with
Although
me.
we don't know how many kleptomaniacs we have in our audience.
We don't, but to my point though, Katie, have you
Yes.
stayed in a hotel where, like, if you knew that you would not get caught, would you have taken the artwork off the walls?
No, I can't
Right.
fit it in my carry-on.
It's
I'm
commodity.
not trying to make this difficult. I apologize. But no, your point taken. No, the artwork generally in a hotel is not compelling enough to really even notice it. It's just
Exactly.
there, it's unoffensive.
Right. It's commodity content. And then there are two sets of tasks that AI can do: generation, which is making new stuff, net new stuff, and then comparison, or what we call editing, where it's taking existing stuff and manipulating it, summarizing it, for example, rewriting it. Generally speaking, the more that task is dealing with commodities, the more it is a good task potentially for AI. The more a task is comparative versus generative, the more the better candidate is for AI. So if you have comparative tasks that are purely commodity, like summarize this conference call into meeting notes and action items, that is 100% something that AI should be doing. On the other hand, if you have write, some amazing poetry, that's generative, that's highly creative if you're a good poet, and as a result, those are tasks that probably AI should not be doing, because it's just not going to be as good at it today as of mid 2023 when we're talking about this stuff. So will editors and writers become extinct? No, because there are still enough of those pieces of content that are generative and creative that we need people on them. Now, are there plenty of commodity content tasks that will diminish those people? Yes, to some degree there are, right? Think of how many corporate blogs you've read where you read 800 words of something and the words just slid off your brain because they meant nothing, right? That's commodity content. Yeah, machines can do that.
Well, the thing, we do get asked this question a lot. And the thing I always tell people is that the jobs won't go away, but the way that we think about the jobs and the tasks that are asked of those people are what's going to change. And so, someone who writes, generic corporate content today might be asked to operate and program a ChatGPT model to generate those. So they're still in the role, they're still writing. It just looks a little bit differently. And so, we had a question a few weeks ago from someone who said they lost their job because the company wanted to save money to use these systems to write the content. Well, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the generic, I can't differentiate this blog from the 6 other blogs that say the exact same thing. And so that's going to take a nosedive in terms of their results, their metrics, their search, their awareness, whatever the KPI is. And so there's still a need for that human intervention. And so the jobs won't go away, but they're going to look different.
Exactly. Now, the second part is, let's go back to 1764.
Oh my goodness. All right, let me buckle up.
Before the American Revolution, before there was the United States of America, in 1764, there was an invention called the spinning jenny. The spinning jenny was a way to essentially spin fibers, mostly wool, into thread. that it replaced the spinning wheel. So instead of having a person operating a spinning wheel, this machine could do 10 to 20 times the amount of work. So a lot of individual people, spinsters, that's literally where the term comes from, found themselves replaced by machines. And now some of them, yes, absolutely became operators of the spinning jenny, right? Because it's a machine that was able to do a lot of this work. But what happens then is you get what's called ordered effects. You create a massive efficiency in part of the process, and then you have bottlenecks on other sides of the process. Because now if you have a worker who can process 10 times the amount of wool, now you need 10 times the amount of wool. If you want to maximize profits, you need that much more wool coming in, or cotton, or whatever. On the other side, you now have piles of yarn and string piling up, right? So now you need vendors to sell it to that can manufacture shirts and curtains and all these other things. So when you take a tool like generative AI and put it in the process for writers, now you suddenly have a problem. If you are doing editing, as you should be, if you go from an editor having 8 to 10 pieces of content to edit per week to 8,000 pieces of content to edit today, you need a lot more editors, right? You now have a substantial bottleneck. So part of this question, the discussion about ignores these ordered effects. What's going to happen in your overall supply chain if you have a massive efficiency in one spot? And people don't think about that because they don't think about process management.
They should. And I also need to amend the opening this show. We're answering all of your marketing, data, AI, and history questions, because that was actually really interesting to think about, because it's all process management. So where does AI fit in? And this is where I really, harp on the 5 Ps, the purpose, people, process, platform, performance. People and process are the 2 most overlooked Ps of the 5 Ps. Number one, who's going to do the thing? Who's responsible for the thing? Who cares about the thing? And then process, how do we do the thing? To your point, Chris, there's not enough of a really holistic view of everything. So let's say, we introduce ChatGPT to answer emails, for example. Okay, great. We no longer have to answer emails. But what else are we doing? So we've built that efficiency, and now we've taken on 6 more clients because the amount of time it was taking us to read and respond to emails has been drastically cut down to seconds. So now we need other help in other areas of the company because that inefficiency has been removed from our overall business process. And
Yeah,
so when people are looking at introducing artificial intelligence, they need to be looking at the business as a whole, not just the one individual task that they are trying to optimize.
exactly right. Even if your entire work chain was now AI, think about that. You need to hire more accountants, more bookkeepers, more people to process contracts and do the bookkeeping and stuff. So no matter where you are in the supply chain, if you are introducing a machine, you are going to have ripple effects, and you need to
Mhm.
take into account what those ripple effects are. And if you are clever, and you are keeping an eye on what's happening within AI, you can anticipate what those ripple effects are going to be and be there in advance, be there sooner rather than later. So for example, we know, prompt engineering is going to be a big deal for the rest of this year, probably the next 2 or 3 years, because as much as we have great systems being built now, you're also going to have prompts in everything, in Microsoft Office, in Windows, in Unity, in Photoshop. All the people who are going to work in all these tools are not going to automate them all, right?
Mhm.
So you're going to have millions and millions of workers in the next 2 years who are going to need training on prompt engineering. And that's one of the reasons why, Katie and I are discussing, okay, well, we need to do a Trust Insights course on prompt engineering because people are going to need that training sooner rather than later. So when you think about your own career path, when you think about the potential loss of jobs, be thinking also what's likely to happen if the quantity of content or operational cadence increases here. What's the upstream and downstream effects? And if you can plan that out, you're going to do really, really well. So really good question. Thanks for asking, Toby. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching today's show. If you liked it, please hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when we publish new shows. If you want to catch all our content, including back episodes, subscribe to our free Inbox Insights newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Want to talk about what you've enjoyed? Join our free Slack community, Analytics for Marketers, at trustinsights.ai/analyticsformarketers. Need help with your marketing, data, analytics, or AI? Drop us a line at trustinsights.ai/contact. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.